Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us to this exciting webinar where we will be unveiling our AI maturity model that Brandon Hall Group has been working on. My name is David Forry. I'm here with Michael Rochelle, who's our Principal and Chief Strategy Officer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, David.
Absolutely. So if any of you are not familiar with Brandon Hall Group, we are a HCM analyst firm that specializes in inspiring a better workplace experience. And we do that with organizations around the world. You can see these, I guess, logos flying across the screen here. It's just a small sample of the clients that we're working with a global reach. And a lot of these companies are the ones that contributed to the survey results that you'll see here in a minute. So everything that we talk about has been validated by the organizations on the screen, and we look forward to sharing it with you today. Just a quick commercial here. We have a lot of events going on. We do have our Excellence in Technology Awards and EdTech Awards that are due this Friday. But in addition to our large HCM Excellence Conference in February, I also wanted to mention that we have an AI Summit coming up next month, about October 16th and 17th. We'll talk a little bit more about it today at the end, but you'll see some of the information here will be covered by Michael in his session at our AI Summit. And we go into much greater detail than we will go in today, because today we only have 30 minutes, and at the event we'll have about 90. So we hope that you can join us at one of our upcoming events. Another great thing is today, every attendee will be getting a 3-day trial to our Institute platform. So we will be welcoming you in. You'll be able to access all of our research, all of our case studies from those award winners that I mentioned previously, as well as things like this AI maturity model playbook and our courses and certifications. So we hope you'll be able to maximize those 3 days inside the Institute platform. And finally, we do have a raffle that we'll do at the end of this webinar to give you a free Excellence in Action award submission that's due in November. So stay tuned to that. And here we are. We're ready to get started. Just wanted to let you all know we do have the chat box open. Please feel free to drop in any questions you have. I'll try to answer those as we go, and I'll bring them to Michael's attention. But we'll also save some time at the end for Q&A. So the reason you all came here is for this AI maturity model. And as I mentioned, it is based on the input of 600 leading organizations. And each maturity phase is going to break down 5 different things. So we're going to be looking at where the organization is at, what the governance would look like, and then people, process, and technology. You know, any component for a good technology program or like AI, you need to understand the people capabilities, the process behind it, as well as the technology implementations. So Michael's going to walk through each of these as we go. So let's jump in, Michael.
All right, great. Thanks, David. So we like to do an icebreaker just to find out where you are. And we asked this question previously to the 600 professionals that David mentioned from leading organizations. We'd like to know where your level of readiness is. And as you're thinking through your answers, I'll give you a little bit of background on each one so you can pick the best answer. Exploring and experimenting would be just that. Just getting our toe in the water, trying to figure it out, may not have even implemented anything yet. Trial and error, working with what we call consumer grade AI. Pilot and testing is you made some decisions around AI. You're not ready to do wide scale rollout, but you're looking to test it out and pilot in certain places. Implementing and scaling is where we feel organizations have adopted AI and now they're actively implementing across the organization and seeing where AI can go next. Integrating and optimizing, very mature stage now of AI, and now you're looking where I can get even greater value, maximize the impact of AI. Innovating and transforming, we're talking agentic AI, fully automated processes, walk away, standalone, autonomous AI agency. And literally, we've kind of allowed AI to become a substitute for HI. So those are your choices.
Great. Great. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to the poll. Just a quick summary. I'm looking at it. We got about 40% at the exploring, 35% at the piloting and testing, 20% at implementing and scaling, very few at the optimizing, and actually just probably a couple on the innovating and transforming section. So very interesting from that standpoint.
And not too different than what we saw in our percentages that you can see up top. So of those professionals, if we kind of just take the math that David just threw out, it kind of buckets into what David likes to call the low, medium, and high approach to this. I think we kind of fall into the relatively the same percentages, which starting from the far right, AI is brand new to everyone. And there's a lot of reasons why it's still a burgeoning, very promising approach. But you're talking about 1 out of 10 organizations are at that agentic, walkaway, autonomous workflow process automation integration within HR. I want to point out that when we did the research around this, there's a lot of different ways to present the information. We didn't want anyone to feel like there's red, yellow, green to this. Like someone is bad, kind of good, almost like there's no report card on this. What we wanted to get across is kind of work through deduction, which is in interviewing HR and business professionals, going over organizational best practices, reviewing our case study award winners, looking at our research. We took and grouped the activities around what you see here to create the state of readiness. So what we looked at is kind of where people are within the HR organization, size, upskilling capabilities. What is the process that's going on within HR? Grouping around what technology has been implemented. The organizational state, which is code for how ready are we for this? And then governance state, which I think is the mitigating factor for all of us, is are we ready for it? Do we have the right controls in place? What we did is we looked at literally all these hundreds of companies and kind of organized these principles and came up with the phases of readiness. So this is really driven by literally the way people are doing things, not what we think they should be doing. And then we actually polled people to find out, okay, now that we've kind of organized these phases, where do you think you fall? And that's what the percentages show up top.
Great. We have one more quick poll. We won't leave it up as long. But based on that high level look, just curious, do you think that you chose the right answer previously on where your readiness is? Would you actually move up, or would you perhaps move down a phase? Just kind of curious, everybody has some ideas where they are, but it's difficult to know where everybody else is. And I think that's one of the draws to this webinar. So there are still a couple of coming in. I do appreciate everybody's answer, but we're going to go ahead and end the poll and jump into the meat of the presentation.
Okay. So there's a lot of information on here, and surely we'll be able to share this with you after the fact. And I'll also be doing a workshop around this with David at our AI Summit coming up on October 16th and 17th. So if you want to get more of the details and get to talk to us in person about it and see how it all rolls out, please join us. But what I'd like you to take away from this slide, and the slides that are going to come, is in order to be ready, we had to define what ready looked like. And in working with many organizations, we've learned that these are the 5 basic principles for getting anything right in HR. You have to have good organizational state, which is that readiness phase. How are we trying to get people ready? And with AI, it's really focusing on the idea of where are we from a manual process in phase 1? What are we doing? What do we want to target? The teams that are working on this on the people side, we know are small and ad hoc at this point. The processes themselves are ad hoc, oftentimes undocumented. We find that with any great transformation, AI being just another example, it puts downward pressure on the organization in phase 1 to say, where are we in general? Because if we don't understand that, then we really can't understand how AI is going to play out and where we're going to put the time and effort. Technology, I know you see the first word being spreadsheets and basic software. That's where we're at. In fact, most research says that many HR processes, upwards of 60%, are still at best manual or semi-automated. But with an eye on technology with AI, it's not have I used the latest LLM, but basically saying, what is the transformational step with AI? Where could we target AI to take care of a spreadsheet or a manual process? Governance, I have to say, whether you're in phase one or phase five, it never gets less important. But in phase one, particularly, we have to decide if we bring this into the building, how we're going to handle it. I use the analogy of fire. You know, AI is a lot like fire. Properly controlled and kept in the right containment, you can bring it into your house, it can heat your home, can cook your food, or it can burn the building to the ground. How do you do that? Through governance. So in phase one, it's particularly important to figure out before we bring this into the building, how are we ready? Intended purpose of it, who's going to have access to it, how are we going to monitor this, data privacy, all those things kick in big in phase one.
All right. And I know there's a lot in here, as Michael said. You'll see this in much more detail when we give you all access to the Institute platform, get access to this maturity model. It comes with not only the model that we're walking through, but a lot of details about how to get to the next phase, a real blueprint on where you go from here. So if you're in phase one, how do I get to phase two? How do I get to phase three? Those types of things. You see over on the right side, we're not going to cover those all today, but things like challenges and opportunities. As Michael said, it's like fire. Yes, there's some challenges behind it, but there's some real opportunities behind it as well. Think of all the things you can do. So you'll be able to unpack this in much greater detail. So let's check out phase two.
And this is great because this is our first transition, David. So that playbook that you were referring to would be the blueprint of how you move. So what we want to get at here, and the key is to remember what the model is called. It's the AI progression model for empowering HR excellence. So this is what we see is like what happens after phase one. So do you have to be doing all of this? Could you have been doing some of these in phase one or phase three? Yes, but generally speaking, what does it look like to come out of phase one? So what's the organizational state? Now we're beginning to say we're comfortable with AI. There's policies and procedures and mandates we're going to be putting in place. Key HR processes are being looked at to get AI to create a systematic, repeatable process, get rid of some of the errors, kind of create fairness, all sorts of things. And then on the people side, now we're starting to upskill and reskill and dedicate HR resources to the cause. We're not doing this as like a hobby or like have a day job and then have this sideline called AI. We're starting to dedicate people and research and create what I call a persistent state of HR application. From a technological side, now we're starting to take a really good look at how do we start to use this beyond like digital assistants. Now we're starting to connect technology to onboarding process. I believe this is where companies begin to put one eye on the vendor landscape and starting to decide what they might do. And then for governance, we're talking about making sure we don't make a mistake with it. That's really the premise in phase two. We've got the policies and procedures, but we want to make sure we do it right. And we want to make sure it's a respectful process. So you'll start to hear things like explainability, transparency, ethics being used. Yes, Amy, you'll get all the slides. And thank you for thinking fire is a great analogy. It's always hopefully it resonates. So it's great to hear that fire resonates. Okay, phase three. Now we're starting to look at a quick movement into AI having direct HR, but now business impact. So now the organization is looking forward to AI supporting key business goals and driving organizational strategy. We're now looking at HR creating a business partnership where they can use AI to do advanced skills development, being able to replace training and using AI as a training approach, being able to use predictive insights. We feel comfortable in phase one and phase two when we did our data stratification, our data lakes, and got our data just right in Scrub. We now feel comfortable that we can start to provide insights and maybe do a little bit of predicting the future. Processes, we've got good solid governance and process. So now we're doing bias monitoring. We're looking at being able to onboard new content because we feel comfortable with the closed LM approach. RAG, fancy term for I have a question, let's go retrieve something from somewhere in the archives of the company, come back and say this is what we need to do. We're starting to feel comfortable that we can manage the content in AI to deliver us something that we feel every employee could use and that there's no inconsistencies. Technology is beginning to take advantage of that as well. And we're hoping that now we have dashboards and we're beginning to rely a little bit more on AI and actually relying a little bit less on HI. How does that all take place? More comprehensive governance, more understanding, more QC, more QA, making sure we're keeping AI on the tracks within the AR organization, and beginning to say that HI is now more of a checkpoint, a last review, or what we call the blend of HI and AI, human intelligence, making sure the AI is right. We're starting to let go a little bit in phase 3 and beginning to embrace AI transformation.
Yeah, a great comment in the chat from Nadine. And you're absolutely right, Nadine. Various departments within the HR are at various phases in the readiness. And even within one organization, you see very different applications, whether it's, talent acquisition, going out and recruiting and looking, sourcing and looking at resumes versus maybe learning and development. They might be at two different ends of the spectrum. We see that often when we get into it. One of the things, Michael, maybe you can mention is about the different examples we give to each practice area and departments. And, we've broken all these phases out into those areas too. Can you touch on that quickly?
Sure. So in what we've seen in our research is what is the direct impact to an HR process? We track that very carefully. What does that look like, say, in phase 1 versus phase 5? So let's just take an example that David threw on talent acquisition. In phase 1, you're looking at resume parsing, general stuff, mix and match, maybe replacing, repetitive tasks like what robotic process automation was going to do. It's the basics. Fast forward to level 5, talent acquisition. You're talking about AI making the decision whether or not you hire that person. Autonomous self-decision making models based on agent-based AI algorithms. And you live by Mary's a good hire or John's a bad hire because AI told me that. Another example in learning, basics in learning, machine learning. People who learn this also learn these other things. Remember, AI is an umbrella for a lot of different terminologies. There's an alphabet soup on that. Phase 5 with learning is an agent is teaching somebody something and there's no interaction by a person, and they grade them and they assess them and they decide and tell the organization, yes, this person knows this and they're ready to apply it and they've proven it. So what I'm trying to get at is the biggest determinant in the phases is how much people let go in each phase and how much AI begins to be relied on. It's the real changes in the processes across all areas of HR. Good point, David. I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely.
Okay, phase 4. Now we're getting into where the air is rarefied, as we say. We're talking about basically 1 out of 3 organizations living in this, or 1 out of 10 organizations living in this phase. Now we're talking about we're just ready to let go completely. We are very confident that what we're doing with AI is embedded across all areas of HR process. We have cross-functional, highly skilled people that are actually dedicating at least a majority, if not all of their time, to being AI experts within the HR organization. It's giving us the level of insights and predictability and modeling. I would say phase 4, from a process standpoint, is where HR finally is moving at the speed of business. What I'd like you to focus in on is the word agile methodology. AI allows HR to be able to fail fast now, to beta, to get things happening more often, more quickly, receiving feedback, and course adjusting. It's the holy grail of making HR move at the speed of business. Technology, we're all in. We've got providers in the door. We're looking at all sorts of process automation. This is the beginning of moving from buying it from someone else AI to, you'll see in phase 5, is building it yourself. The promise of bringing in industry experts to do agentic AI. We're on the cusp of that now. So in other words, we're kind of graduating from everything that we can touch that's consumer grade or in the box AI to now on the precipice of let's do it ourselves. And then governance is really all about risk mitigation. It's so pervasive in the organization that now we have to police it. It's beyond policies and procedures. We have to have an advanced approach to making sure that we keep this on the tracks because it's being used everywhere.
Now, something you kind of addressed, and we got a question kind of at the same time, and I think it kind of answers it. So, Michael, maybe I'll ask a new question. Is, now that you get to like phase 4, phase 5, a lot of people are buying platforms that have AI that do a lot of the work. But once you get up to the phase 4 or phase 5, would you argue that it would almost have to be built custom for the organization? Like you couldn't really be phase 5 if you're just buying an off-the-shelf platform.
That's a very interesting point. I'll give you a couple of examples based on organizations that we've worked with. It's kind of in the middle. So splitting hairs between 4 and 5 based on your comment, David, and our audience comment. Phase 4 would be my base structure of AI is coming from an off-the-shelf platform, but I may customize around it. I may add things around it versus a true phase 5 company, maybe just forgetting about anything that's off the shelf. That's the subtlety. So we might be starting with, say, an LMS that's off the shelf, but we've decided to build a layer of AI around it that's customized from the organization. That might be RAG, or it might be advanced search, or it might be agents that are helping with basic things. So I would say the subtle difference between 4 and 5 is I'm still holding on to the lease, but I'm beginning to build. Whereas I think phase 5, we're building.
Right. And hopefully we answered the question in the chat. And if there's any other specific questions, please feel free to correct and pop that in as well. So phase 5.
Phase 5. Phase 5 is we're standing on the summit of Everett right now. We've made the climb, but I believe it's the end of the beginning. So we're innovating and transforming, but I think we're starting a whole nother journey. The idea being that we've made it through the progression of saying we're in control of our own destiny. We're fully comfortable with AI. We have the right people, the right process. So what I like to say is the right people doing the right things, the right way at the right time. We're making self-determining decisions. We're autonomous, but it opens up a whole nother door that isn't in this model, and that is the what's next. Organizations that are at phase 5, which again, we're only talking about barely 1 out of 10, is now saying, I've got a firm foundation underneath me. So I'm kind of at the top of the beginning. And most organizations that have reached this level, like when we meet with our award-winning organizations that feel that they're at a level 5 or phase 5, what they're saying is, it allows me to be completely future focused. Whatever comes up next week in AI, I have the organizational capability of consuming it immediately and implementing. That's the big difference in 5. There's no more building blocks. There's no more like the house is done. Now we're talking about additions. But most importantly, having an organizational structure with governance, process, people, and tech done, and an organizational state of AI readiness as a competency to take on whatever turn AI takes, and we can immediately take advantage of it, if that makes sense. So I believe 5 is a step off into a whole nother level of receptivity with AI. And that's the big difference.
Great. Great. Thanks, Michael. So again, please feel free to drop some questions into the chat box. We do have one more poll question here before we really dive into the Q&A, and we will stay on as long as there's questions. Michael and I will be here to answer them. Speaking of Michael answering questions, He has committed to talking one-on-one with anyone if they want to dive into this deeper, talk about their specific use cases. What does it mean for me and my department? That's a great opportunity to chat with Michael. We mentioned offering that 3-day trial that's going to give you access to all of our research case studies courses. We have a lot of AI courses, I think. Right, no, I was trying to put a number on there, but I don't want to do that because I'll probably lowball how many we have in the platform. There's also an option to learn more about supporting your organization's AI progression. So if you really need some help and you really want some advice and consulting, that's what that question's for. And then questions about learning more about the Institute and everything it comes with that 1-year commitment. And then the AI Summit that we mentioned, where we have lots of great sessions. We have award winners from our HCM Excellence Awards that are presenting. We'll send that agenda over to you, and we hope that we can host you next month. So we can go ahead and end that poll and open up to any other questions that people might have. Or Michael, if there's anything else you want to add.
Well, people are kind of thinking through their final round of questions. You brought up an interesting point. I think we're one of the pioneers too, where we can actually certify HR professionals in AI. So if you want to like be able to get some certifications and some credentials and some validation as you as a professional, that's part of our institute as well. It's not just a variety of AI courses, but they're organized in a way that we can make you sufficient and proficient to be able to say that you are an AI strategist or that you really know what's going on. And I think that's going to be super important as you work through the phases. We all know that it comes down to, are people ready within the HR organization? Or do we have the right upskilling and approach and right level of understanding? So that's part of our institute offering.
Right. And there's even some micro courses if you're not ready for a certification, but even asking things like the technology aspect, like, understanding what is RAG, retrieval and gathering, what's the difference between an AI assistant and an AI agent? One has the ability to act on your behalf and the other one's just grabbing more information to make your life easier. So lots of different avenues. Wherever you are in your journey, Institute really has a way to help you out.
Couldn't agree more. And you're going to be hearing from award-winning organizations and thought leaders at the AI Summit, so you can go on their personal journeys when they're there as well. Because I think nothing resonates better than hearing about individual companies that fall into that progression of who is the 13 and 16 and 42 and 25 that fall into those categories. So we'll be at the AI Summit and other colleagues like yourself trying to figure out where they fall in that progression and how to get better.
We do have a Q&A that came in directly to us, Michael. It says, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the role HR plays in the overall training and change management and enabling the whole organization to embrace and adopt AI.
I love that question. And it's one that when we address it at the summit, we have like more landscape to do it. But you bring up a very interesting nuance. In our certification programs, when we certify HR strategists, we talk about as a core competency, HR has to be an advocate and leader in terms of transformation. And I think AI falls into that. If it's not going to be an IT driven process, it's going to be IT governance. We just don't want AI running around in the building. There'll be some controls and guidance, almost like a compliance format. But getting the organization to see the value of AI and what it can do to transform the workforce is going to be 100% the responsibility of HR. And I think a lot of it's going to lean on the learning and development organization, develop curriculum to get people ready, get people comfortable. We saw an example of this years ago when mobile learning rolled out. Companies that were great at that realized the fact that you can't take digital literacy as a given. Not everyone likes to use their thumbs, tablets, they just don't like it. So great organizations said, what is the ready, set, go to get to the level of transformation? So I think there's going to be a lot of learning, getting people comfortable, making people aware, good communication strategy, You have to create a level of awareness with your overall employees and your leaders. And that's going to fall squarely on the learning and development department to roll that out through their LMS or instructor-led training or what have you. The other part that's going to be too is as HR becomes more integral to the business strategy, AI is going to come with that. Because the greatest asset investment that we have in organizations today are people. People are our greatest asset investment. And so I think the hardest thing is going to be is HR is going to be put on the spot of when do we need a person and when do we need AI? And we have to get comfortable with that. A great homework assignment before you come to the AI summit is watch American Factory on Netflix. Gives you a good example of even leaders are going to have to think differently. That I'm going to be managing a person in a non-person environment now. I'm going to have to know what these AI agents are doing or what AI is doing. I'm just not a people manager anymore. I'm going to major in people, but I may have a double major now in technology because I'm going to be in this mixed environment. That's all going to, examples of that are going to fall on the HR group to lead this discussion, to get people comfortable with it, to reduce the resistance and anxiety around that without thinking it's an extinction level event. We're all going to lose our jobs. It's not about that. It's inevitable. HR is going to be responsible for making that happen and being the advocate for it across the organization.
Yeah, and kind of springboard off a comment that you made. We did a podcast about a month ago with one of the speakers from the AI Summit who talks about training and developing your AI agents. Thinking about it the same way as an employee. How do I need to train and refine my agents that are working on my behalf? Spending that same amount of time investing in them as you would a person, really considering them part of the team. So that's again, a comment that you made, Michael, made me think of that.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, and I'm glad that you did, because we have to remember AI has bookends of human in it. The neural networks, the algorithms, the data strata, all the data, everything, it doesn't fall out of the sky. AI is not aliens coming from another planet and landing in its own ecosystem. It begins and ends with people. People are going to have to build the neural networks. They're going to have to train the models. They're going to have to provide the guidance that eventually leads to AI doing what it's doing. And then we're gonna manage and measure and monitor that outcome. So you're absolutely right. You're going to have to go from training people to training models. You're going to have to get that right because as we become reliant and we get into like phase 5 with these autonomous systems, the answer that you get with AI or the task that it takes on or the thing that it does in general is going to be 100% connected to what you taught it. And are you going to be open enough to allow it to continue to learn and to train? So I think that's a beautiful analogy that we have people that go through an evolutionary process and development process. You're going to be spending equal amount of time going through AI and treating that in its own developmental process. In fact, you'll be spending more time with AI because the computation level, blows away any human's brain. The computation level is enormous, and it will make up its own mind and make its own decisions based on how you train it. So if I were HR, I would be ready to have that discussion.
Perfect.
Oh, someone brought up the AI cert. It's not on our site. It's part of our institute. So when you join as an institute member, you get access to all of our AI courses and the micro course that David talked about and the overall getting certified. So that's part of becoming a member. Good question.
Yeah, and we'll follow up with you directly. And speaking of follow-ups, at the end of this webinar, there's also an opportunity for a survey. So if there's anything that we didn't touch on and you did want to bring up, feel free to drop it in there as well. I know Michael volunteered his time, but also if there's anything else you want to see answered, please feel free to drop it in there if you're more comfortable with that. But we did go a little over time than we planned, but it looks like most of the participants stayed on. So I think the last thing for us to do is just do the raffle contest. And then again, if anybody has questions, please come back to us. And I just got it in. We have a Robert O. Robert got your name in the chat from our host, and we will follow up with you about how to get access to that raffle. Thank you, everyone. Michael, how about some closing thoughts to end the session?
Best thing I can leave you with is we are all students. David, myself, experts, yourselves, we're all on a level playing field. We have to just be embracing the idea that we're going to be sponges for a while. We have to absorb all of this and process this. So we're all in it together, and we're all trying to figure this out together. And this is the fastest technology has ever moved in the history of mankind. So it's gonna take a village to raise the idea of AI being in any one person's organization. So let's learn it together. Let's stay close with one another and let's figure it all out. But this is a fantastic opportunity within your organization. But let's approach it as learners ourselves and students of the game.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Hope to see you October 16th in sunny South Florida.
Thank you.